There's a pivot point for shapes. Wasn't that my wheel? With fewer sides to feel its movement, with its center pivot, it rotates easily. Now I want to ensure the pivot is centered. Where do we get it? We took a circle, the first one, the plus sign. We modified by adding the modifier and changing parameters. The third thing is hierarchy, where the pivot is more involved. I want to see the cylinder's pivot. I see it in wireframe mode. We covered that yesterday. The pivot point is centered, making rotation easy. Ensure it's centered. Use the Create tool, then modify to add modifiers and change parameters. The third step is hierarchy, crucial for the pivot. To see the cylinder's pivot, switch to wireframe mode. We modified by adding the modifier and changing parameters. The third takeaway is hierarchy, where the pivot point is more involved. I don't know why the first day's recording wasn't shared on WhatsApp for review, but I asked Ms. Phaeton to share yesterday's and today's recordings. Let's work together to reach this point. Let's grab the move tool for the cylinder. I'm upset because the cylinder's pivot point isn't centered. It should rotate. My colleagues didn't share the recording of the first day on WhatsApp, but I asked Ms. Phaeton to share the recordings from yesterday and today. You should have the recordings from these 2 days. Let's work together. Grab the move tool for the cylinder. I'm upset, Nai, that the pivot point of the cylinder is not in its center. How can this wheel rotate around the point stuck to the car, attached with a side bolt? It must rotate. To center its pivot point from the hierarchy, activate the effect pivot only option and set it to center to object in the middle of the cylinder. Keep it centered. Imagine the pivot point isn't centered. The cylinder's pivot isn't centered. So how does the wheel rotate around the car's attachment point? It rotates. To center the pivot, activate effect pivot only and set it to center to object in the cylinder's middle. Before, the pivot was at the edge. Centering allows correct rotation. If not centered, the wheel rotates crookedly. Centering ensures smooth rotation. But if you want to keep its pivot point in the center, activate the effect pivot only option and set it to center to object. Keep it in the middle of the cylinder and it will be centered. I want to place it in the middle so it can rotate correctly. I want its pivot point to be exactly in the center. So I set it to center to object and deactivate that option. When I exit, I find that the wheel's pivot point has changed to the center. It's on the edge. I place it in the center so it can rotate around itself. If it's like this, the wheel is crooked. It's not rotating around itself. It rotates around a center point, and as a wheel, it works smoothly, but it won't rotate around itself. When flipped, it flips around that point. I need its pivot point centered, so I set to center to object and deactivate that option. Exiting, I find the wheel's pivot point is now the center. Does this affect wheel movement? No, it doesn't affect it as it's attached to the car. It only affects when rotating itself. Before, it rotated oddly like a box. Elements rotate around their center, like Earth. This center is the gravity center, so it rotates around it. Because it's attached to the car, it will only affect when I rotate it around itself from this direction. It rotates around its pivot point. Before, it would have rotated around the side in a strange way, like a box. The movement of elements in rotation revolves around their center just like the Earth. This center is the center of gravity for your shape, so it rotates around its center, of course. Apply this to all shapes, the cube, the teapots. Apply this to everything, letters, words, the pyramid, the tree, because the tree has a pivot point. Any point in space has a pivot point. Here's the tree. I'm not just talking nonsense. For example, this type of tree, I make it a bit lighter. So I placed it like this. Here's a tree. This is a big tree that I took. Why is it big? Because it took the last parameter when I set its height to 375, for example. This is a tree, and it is unique because it has a feature known as a pivot point. This pivot point allows the tree to move or rotate in a specific way, which is quite interesting. Where is its pivot point? Remove the cylinder. I don't want it. Where is the pivot point of this tree? I stand on it and grab the move or rotate tool. Point centered below. Tree rotation is unnatural. The tree rotates. I opened it. Close it. Close the button you opened. Close it. Now, back to rotation. It rotates around its pivot point. Wind shakes the tree in animation. Record quickly after render. Animate quickly to review. Activate auto animation. Because it will remain open for you in any shape, you need to close it like this. Now, let's go back to the rotation. So it rotates around its pivot point. When does this tree fall? When do I benefit from something like this? I'm making an animated film where the wind suddenly makes the tree shake like this. The wind causes it to sway. And I want to record this movement. Can I record a movement like this quickly? Yes. First, let me see the render of this tree. Can we do the animation quickly so I can review the animation we covered yesterday? Imagine this half hour is all a review of everything we covered yesterday, or it could be a review in another way, but it's a review because we covered animation yesterday. Let's say I want to activate the auto animation, for example, so I have a specific movement here. Let's go to frame 10 and I'll move the tree like this. Then I'll come back a bit to frame 20 and quickly pull the tree back as if it's stretched and then snap back. Now at frame 30, the tree will have a strong push, like it's being pushed hard. Let's pull it a bit more because the distance is significant. Now let's go to frame 40 on the timeline and give it a little shake. Then at frame 50, I'll shake it again as if it's starting to calm down. By frame 60, it has been pushed, and then at frame 70, the movement starts to slow down so that the tree stabilizes in its place again. It's like a physics simulation, so it will have a light response, meaning you'll see its speed and then it will have a gentle response. So at this point it should be steady, even though I wasn't really keen on doing it this way, but let's go with it. Then I go to frame 40 on the timeline and give it a little shake. And then I come to frame 50 and shake it again, as if it's starting to calm down. By frame 60, it has been pushed. And then at frame 70, the movement starts to slow down so that the tree stabilizes in its place again. So it's like physics work. And you get a light response, meaning you see its speed and then it reacts slightly. For example, it should be set right here, even though I didn't really want to do it this way. But let's go with it. Okay? When you come to see the movement, I'll turn off the auto key, of course, so I don't make a mistake with the hierarchy, because there are keys that need to be closed after you finish working with them, like activating the pivot point and moving. The two buttons. Let's turn it on and see how it looks. It looks like it's moving like this, kind of like an S shape or something. Let's see how it looks here in a smoothing or shaded view. It looks like this. Can I make this a video? I can make a video. This is a movement with the car as it moves with the laundry flying off the rooftops, along with the birds that can't seem to fly in the air. You can create 20, 30 movements in the same scene to illustrate a specific situation, or it could be a story, a comedic moment, a school scenario, or an educational experience. This is an experiment in physics for you in physics. You can do it more precisely than I can because you understand speed, acceleration, and deceleration. So, with shapes like this, you can create better values than I can. I'm just explaining. But let's see how it looks from the top view. If someone is looking at it from above, let's turn on the paper like this. It will look from above just like the front view, meaning it won't be too strong, right? Is that clear? So, this is the movement from different perspectives. That's strong. Is the talk clear? So I showed the movement from different perspectives. I can create this movement. You can, of course, it would have been better if there was a floor and houses, but we will make things easier and tell him 10. I export the active time, 100 frames, about 3 seconds. I define these 3 seconds here. In the render output, I select file, name it the tree, and save it as an AVI video. I'm exporting the entire scene, meaning I'm exporting about 3 seconds. So for the 3 seconds that I'm exporting, I come down here and define it. But please don't let the scene turn off. Let's keep it without turning it on first. I go to the render output here, I say file, and then I come here and say the tree. For example, I ask for a scene titled The Tree as a video. I save it as an AVI file, the only video format available. It doesn't work on WhatsApp, but that's fine for me. I keep all values unchanged and render. The render is fast, finishing 3 frames quickly. See, I prefer using one tree because with 50 trees, it would only finish during the Maghrib prayer break, yeah? I let it run while praying and it reaches frame 6. Fewer elements mean faster render speed. I'll keep all the values as they are. It's not our area to work on them. I say render. Let's see the render. The render won't be slow, it will be a bit fast. It's currently frame 0, frame 1, and it finishes 3 frames. You'll feel the movement, but I prefer to do it with just one tree, because if I had a scene with 50 trees, I wouldn't be able to do it except during the Maghrib prayer break. I would let it run while you're praying Maghrib. And the render is working on its own. When we finish and come back to check, it has reached frame number 6. This means that when the elements in the scene decrease, the render speed increases because there are fewer elements. When the materials decrease, the speed also increases. So I can produce my scenes when your device is powerful, with high RAM and a high-end processor, the best of the best. This graphics requires very high-end computers. When you say, I'm going to set up a lab at my college, whether it's an engineering college or a science college, and I'm going to create a 3D lab to design physical and chemical experiments and anatomy and biology and all that stuff. So you need computers with very high specifications. Look, the animation has reached frame 16 while I'm saying these few words, so the process is ongoing. I'm not going to stop. I don't want to stop because I want you to notice the process itself. It's a full render of 101 frames. There are 101 frames. So more than 3 seconds, and I'll know exactly what their relationship is with seconds and minutes. I'll check how many frames per second it is. If it's 30 frames per second, because I haven't adjusted the settings for seconds and minutes in the time configuration. There's something called time settings here that I haven't opened because it's a bit advanced for our course, but it's available right here under the Move tool, which is that little yellow icon. I'll click on it and show it to you, but we won't go too deep into it.